Hello and welcome to the breakout session for the Best Award. My name is Nick Palmer, and today I'm going to be talking about the Best Award. Just as a note, all of the Kickoff breakout session presentation files are available in the Best National Registry, and links to all of the Kickoff breakout session presentation videos are on the Rocky Mountain Best YouTube channel. This year, there are two competition options for the 2022 Best Robotics season. There's the classic or multi-team robotics competition that we all know and love, and then there's the classroom competition. You may be familiar with that competition from 2020. This year, the Front Range Best and Rocky Mountain Best hubs have chosen to go with the classic or multi-team robotics challenge, which we're very excited about. Here's an overview of the multi-team competition activities that will be available for this year's game. So every team has to compete in the hub mandatory tasks. That's the engineering notebook, robot critical design review, and head-to-head robot performance. All teams have to participate in these three tasks in order to compete in the best 2022 season, period. Now, there's additional Best Award components that are optional. And by optional, I mean you do not have to participate in them, but you will get a 0 on the leaderboard for these tasks if you choose not to, and you won't be eligible for the Best Award. Those tasks are the marketing presentation, team exhibit and interviews, and the Spirit and Sportsmanship Award. There's also some optional skills challenges you see here, which teams can choose to participate in, although there will not be any scoring available for that. There's also a regional championship award for the Best Simulink Design Award. And there are other national level awards. These are tasks that are held by Best Robotics as a national organization. And you can sign up for these tasks on the Best National Registry. Note that neither Front Range Best or Rocky Mountain Best are involved in these MathWorks Best IQ challenges or the Robot Modeling Challenge this year, since they're being held at the national level. So what is the Best Award? Well, the Best Award is our most prestigious award, and it's presented every year to the team that best embodies the concepts of boosting engineering, science, and technology. So the components of the Best Award include the engineering notebook, marketing presentation, team exhibits and interviews, spirit and sportsmanship, and robot game day performance. Now, notice that in this breakdown, the robot game day performance only contributes 15 out of 100 points. So in order for teams to be successful at the Best Award, they must excel at other aspects of the competition, such as the engineering notebook and the marketing presentation. It's also important to note that teams' participation in the Best Award is optional. So you have to sign up for those optional tasks that I talked about in the last slide in order to participate. There's a couple of important logistics to mention for the Best Award. So in order to officially sign up for the Best Award competition, you have to sign up for a marketing presentation and a team interview time slot on the Best National Registry. Those are two separate time slots that you have to sign up for. If your team wants to compete, you have to sign up for these by the due date in your registry. And I'll say this multiple times, but all due dates are available in the registry in your team workflow. The first section of the Best Award is the marketing presentation, which makes up 25 points out of 100 points for the Best Award. And the real purpose of the marketing presentation is for the students to learn how to address the needs of a potential client, and in order to present their team as if they were a real company and navigate a business environment as a brand. So in this presentation, the team's role is to create a company and a brand that designs and manufactures robots. That would be the robot in the robotics competition for the year. And the judge's role is to serve as the potential client who's looking to purchase a robot. The client's needs are represented by the robotics award for that year. Like I mentioned before, each team must sign up for a marketing presentation slot and a team exhibit and interview time slot by the deadline in the National Registry. Please see your team workflow for any deadlines. And if you have any issues or need to change your time slot, please feel free to reach out to your hub. This year, we're excited to have in-person presentations on practice day. So please go ahead and take a look at your team handbook for details about the specific location for these presentations for your hub. Plan to arrive with the full group of students who are going to be participating in the presentation 5 to 10 minutes prior to your slot to check in. And then at least 5 minutes will be scheduled between presentation sessions to allow students to come in and out of the room and for any last minute adjustments that are needed. Each team is allotted 25 minutes for their marketing presentation. That includes setup, presentation, questions, and breakdown and clearing of the room. Please note that the presentation time limits are firm and teams may be cut short if they exceed the time limit. It's also worth noting that it is the team's responsibility to keep track of their own time. And judges will not notify teams when they're close to their time limits. In the marketing presentation, each team is essentially presenting themselves as a business that's pitching their latest invention or product to a group of decision makers at Best Robotics Inc. Best Robotics would be their client. So your goal is to inform, persuade, and build trust between your company and your potential client. You must cover your brand promise, your company and team's unique characteristics, and also your community outreach efforts. It's always a good idea to use storytelling to illustrate any points that you have and make that personal connection with your client. And then also, you always want to make sure that you close your presentation by formalizing an offer to the client and thanking them for their time. Here's a few important guidelines for the marketing presentation. A minimum of 4 students must participate in the presentation, and a maximum of 8 students can participate. All students have to actively participate in the presentation. It's also worth noting that adult leaders aren't allowed in the room, nor any silent spectators. Any students in the room have to participate in the presentation. It's worth noting that photographing and videotaping is allowed, but the person actually taking the photograph and doing the videotaping does count towards the limit for the number of students, and they also have to present at least part of the presentation. It's always a good idea to bring, models of your robot, or, some teams even choose to bring their robot for demonstration purposes. Teams should also make sure that they represent diversity in grades, gender, race, ethnicity, and abilities that are present on their team. You want your presentation team to be truly representative of your company. The overall presentation format is up to the team. You can take any format that you want with your presentation. Best will provide access to a projector or some kind of display for the presentation. Please see your team handbook for any additional information on the hookups available. The team can also bring any additional equipment it was just used for demonstration purposes. And it's also worth noting that you won't necessarily have a good internet connection. It's always recommended to have extra backups of your presentation available just in case something goes wrong. It's also worth noting that the judges can begin asking questions of the team after 10 minutes of the presentation. The team can also, instigate a conversational format at any time if it's desired. This is really just to encourage a atmosphere similar to, your average business meeting. Teams should use the judges' questions as cues, and they can adapt and steer the conversation in the way that they want it to go. Teams should be prepared to go off script and have a dialogue exchange with the judges, and also be prepared for any potential questions and answers that might come up. The marketing presentations will be evaluated with the following four categories being considered. Company overview is 30% of your score. Product features are 28% of your score. Your business offer is 20% of your score, and business professionalism is 22% of your score for a total of 100%. Your company overview should cover the following topics. First off, you should cover your organization. So you should probably show some kind of organization structure or org chart. This should include, employee roles, experience levels, inclusiveness, and it should also make sure to show that your team is multidisciplinary. You should go over your mission statement. This should really define, your team's mission, and in one or two sentences, it should describe the team's purpose for being, and it should encapsulate your culture, values, and your ethics. You should also talk about your brand promise. This defines the value or experience that your customers can expect to receive every time they interact with your company. And then finally, it should describe your visual identity. You should create a strong visual identity for your brand. So it should include logos, a color scheme, a style book. Basically, how does your brand look when people see it? Your company overview should also cover things like your public image. This includes any publicity, social responsibility, community visibility and outreach, and things like that. This could, be in the form of brochures, press releases, outreach, anything like that. You should also go over your budget. You should show your funding sources and also any expenses incurred for your business. And then companies are also encouraged to look at their sustainability. So they should look at their one-year company outlook, including employee development, recruitment, training, etc. How does your team plan to better itself in the future and leave itself in good hands for the next year? When talking about your product features, you should cover the following things. First off, you should ensure that you can describe your task knowledge. So what is the problem that you're trying to solve for your customer? What are your customer's priorities? And has your customer laid out any specific requirements or specifications? Those would be what we call the client's needs, and they're really listed in the game story section of the rules. You should also go over your meeting requirements. So describe how your team is meeting the requirements that your client has set forth. What kinds of game details influenced your design? Go over that detailed design. How do the product's features solve your client's problems? You should also talk about differentiation. How does your product differentiate itself from the competition? What about it is unique? And also, you should go over any visual aids. This could be anything from CAD drawings to computer simulations, photos, videos, anything like that. At the end of the day, your team should be presenting itself as a business, and businesses need to make sales. So in order to do that, you need to make a business offer. In your offer, you need to go over the price of your product. So this should essentially be, if your customer were going to buy your robot, how much would it cost? Are you going to think about anything like multiple units, the delivery of the product, warranty, repairs, anything like that? That should all be included in your sales price. You should talk about aftermarket support. So, addressing any details of the warranty and any training needed for the client's workforce to operate or maintain the product. And then, make sure that it's clear what your formal offer is and that you actually have made it in the meeting. Maybe include a slide specifically for it. Finally, your team will be judged on their business professionalism. So things including the mechanics, like have all of your team members showed up? Are they dressed professionally? Or are they dressed, to match the theme of the game? And did students all work together and act professionally? Students should also include endorsement or testimonials to support research or any success stories they have. They should also make sure that the presentation was understandable, well organized, and that the team actually engaged in discussion and that they were responsive to questions. Finally, was your presentation creative and interesting? Is it something that people actually want to watch? All of those things are going to be factored in.
Earlier in the presentation, I mentioned brand promise. As I mentioned, a brand promise is essentially the unique value or experience that a company's customers can expect every time that they interact with that company. And the more that you can deliver on that promise, the stronger the brand value is in the mind of your customers and employees. So here's a couple of tips on how you can make your brand promise the best that it can be. First and foremost, you want to focus on what your business achieves for its customers. What is it that you're actually selling to them? What do you do for them, and how do you do that? It's important to focus on that first and foremost. Second, you should make sure that you're taking ownership of your brand. So you obviously have to pay attention to what your customers' needs are, but you also have to control what you want your brand to be and how you want that to appear to your customers. And also think about, what kinds of customers you hope to sell to. It's important to believe in your own brand. If you don't believe in it, then other people will see right through that and they won't believe in it either. It's important to keep your brand simple and understandable, as well as keep your brand consistent. So, make sure that your values are consistent, but, make it easy for somebody else to understand what your brand is. A couple more tips about brand promise. So it's important to be thorough. Make sure that all aspects of your brand and your business support what you want to deliver to your customers and how you want your brand to appear to others. It's also important to communicate your brand. That includes your employees. So you want to make sure that your employees understand the brand and that they all believe in it as well. And then, like I said about communication earlier, you want to ensure that every interaction reinforces that brand image and promise. So every advertisement, brochure, letter, email, etc., those all represent your brand. Those are all interactions with your brand. And then it's also important to know that managing your brand and the image of your brand is important too, right? So any failings that you do, where you don't deliver on that brand promise, damage your reputation and your brand's image, and other people will remember those things. It's also important to make sure that you're always improving on that brand promise and making sure that you can improve and iterate on how consistently you can deliver it.
The major changes from last year are that presentations are planned to be in person, but this may change to virtual if there are any COVID-19 restrictions or anything like that. And also the score sheet has been reworked, so it's important to carefully read the new score sheet and make sure that your presentation aligns with that score sheet. And just a little bit of advice from a judge, how your team actually presents themselves and how familiar they are with the material has a huge impact on their score. It's best not to actually just read the presentation verbatim, but instead to use cards and notes and only use the presentation as talking points. You really want to make sure that you're actually looking at your audience so that way you're engaged with them. And then also visual aids are always a great thing. Pictures, technology, even bringing a robot to the presentation itself can go a long way. The next component of the BEST award is the team exhibit and interview. So for this section, the team must create a exhibit, and it's a physical space for the students to display essentially a visual story of the team's outcomes and their impact. They should show off their robot product. They should show off the marketing and branding, and also any community outreach and advocacy that they've done. It's also a good idea to display metrics about your company, your business itself, similar to what you showed in your marketing presentation, and also demographics. The interview is also designed to strengthen students' communication skills, validate their knowledge and understanding, and then spotlight any unique design features, activities, or anything that the students actually learned. It's important to note that the score sheet for this year's exhibit and interview section has actually been updated, so please make sure that you go and read that in detail and make sure that your exhibit fits the new score sheet. The scoring breakdown can be seen here. A few important note about this year's exhibits and interviews. Exhibits are physical again this year, which we're very excited about. And exhibits will be presented and judged at game day, and team interviews will also be conducted in person at these exhibits on game day. It's also worth noting that the score sheet has been completely reworked for this year, so please make sure to read it carefully. A few important notes about the exhibits themselves. Teams will be provided tables for the exhibits, and you should make sure to see your team handbook for table sizing and equipment details there. There will be power provided at each of the stations for the exhibits, but you should check with your team handbook to make sure that you'll have a power strip available. In order to be compliant, displays cannot exceed the space of an 8-foot cube, so keep that in mind when designing your exhibit. Any additional equipment that's needed, anything like audiovisual or extension cords or, components of your exhibit are going to be the responsibility of the teams. And then each team is responsible for handling and security of their own materials and equipment. And as another reminder, please make sure to sign up for a marketing presentation time slot and a team exhibit interview time slot by the deadline in the Best National Registry. That is extremely important. Please don't forget. A few guidelines about the team exhibit and interview process. For exhibits, we will provide you a allotted setup time frame and a teardown time frame, and also what times your booth is required to be manned. So please check your team handbook for details on that. Make sure you're not late setting up your booth or tearing down your booth early, as it is very distracting for people visiting the other booths. And also note that judges can inspect your exhibit anytime during the period when your exhibits are required to be manned. So during that time, you may be being judged. You may just not know it. In the interview portion, at least one student representative must be present for the team's assigned interview time slot, and the judges' questions will be based on the rubric, so please read that in detail and be prepared. And then during the interview, judges may also ask about other content in the exhibit, and that can deviate from the content of the rubric. The team exhibit will be scored on the following 4 considerations: creativity, technology, aesthetics, and compliance. You can see the scoring breakdown here. The first section of scoring for the exhibit is going to be creativity. So with this section, the team should clearly demonstrate creativity in incorporating the game thing into their exhibit design. Their exhibit should be unique. After all, the students are designing it from scratch. It should be, something brand new. The game industry and theme should be very prominent in the exhibit. And also the exhibit should have creative elements integrated into it that make the design fun. The second scoring criteria for the exhibit is technology. So the exhibit must make effective use of technology, and that exhibit should also utilize different forms of media. This could be anything like print, models, multimedia, graphics, even things like virtual reality are great additions. Additional technologies have also been incorporated into the exhibit, which add to the overall exhibit and experience as well. And then the final exhibit scoring consideration is aesthetics. And this really comes down to, is your exhibit visually appealing? Is it cohesive, engaging, and interactive? Is the information logically arranged and easy to understand? The student interview will be scored based on the following three considerations: the company elevator speech, knowledge and experience with best, and team outreach. You can see the scoring breakdown here. The first consideration in scoring the student interview is the company elevator speech. When talking to your students should be able to clearly define what benefits their product, the robot mainly, delivers. They should also be able to explain outreach and social responsibility, and they should also be able to convey the team's brand and that brand promise. The second consideration for scoring the student interview is the knowledge and experience with best that your students have. So your students should be able to clearly and easily understand the technical questions that may come up about the robot, team exhibit, or any related materials. They should also be able to show a deep understanding of the actual design of these things. Students should also be able to clearly express an understanding of the game theme, and they should also be able to articulate any lessons that they've learned as a result of the Best Robotics program. And they should also obviously be, very positive and enthusiastic while doing so. The final component for scoring the student interviews is outreach. So this accounts for 46% of your student interview scoring. So students should be able to describe how they shared information and technology with other teams and even their community. Students should also be able to communicate their publicity efforts that they use to generate excitement for BEST and for their team. Students should show clear evidence of team diversity and inclusion efforts, and also students must be able to describe any advocacy for their team that they implemented. This could be anything like fundraising, recruiting, any events that were held, things like that. The next component of the BEST Award is the Engineering Notebook. The Engineering Notebook is mandatory for all teams, so it's important to note that all teams must submit their notebook by the deadline. Please see the National Registry and your team workflow for all deadlines. Teams must submit their notebook in one PDF file as a deliverable in the BEST National Registry. The purpose of your notebook is really to document the process that the team uses to design, build, and test your team's robot. It's really your opportunity to tell the story of your robot and how you developed it and the journey along the way. Please see the separate engineering notebook presentation breakout session for more details about this. The next component of the BEST Award is Spirit and Sportsmanship. Really, this is exactly what it sounds like. Your team will be observed based on the spirit that your team exhibits at the competition, and then your team's conduct in the seating area, exhibit area, the game floor, and the pit area. You'll be evaluated on your team's spirit, and you'll be evaluated based on things like the display of enthusiasm that your team has at the actual event, the use of any signs, posters, props, costumes, anything like that in the stands, anything like cheerleaders, mascots, or organized noise makers. It's important to note here that there are some limitations on this. So bands are limited to 10 instruments, and bands can only play during their team's 3-minute round. And there shouldn't be any powered instruments, no sirens, air horns, anything like that. And then you'll also be evaluated based on the number of supporters that actually show up to support your school. Your team will also be evaluated on sportsmanship. So this includes any outward display of sportsmanship, such as helping other teams that are in need. It'll be about how you conduct yourself, whether you're winning or whether you're losing in the competition. And then there are also scores based on whether or not there's evidence that the students are actually the primary pit crew. Are the students actually doing the work, and how much adult guidance are they actually receiving? And then the last category for the best award is your robot performance. This is the main robotics event that we all love to watch every year. So this will be worth 15 points, and it's based on the following criteria. So it's awarded on a scale. So if your team finishes in the top 20% of all teams, you're awarded the full 15 points. And if your team is awarded, finishes in the top 100% of all teams, so if you just play at all, then you're awarded 3 points, and it's a sliding scale therein. And then if your team is unable to score any points throughout the whole game, then you'll receive 0 points for this section. And then finally, I just have a few tips for how you can succeed in the best award. So first and foremost, you should follow your score sheet. Make sure you read it very closely and apply all of the sections of the rubric. Really, it should be an outline for everything that you do. Additionally, you need to apply the engineering design process to pretty much everything that you should be doing here. So you need to define your problem, brainstorm strategies and design possibilities, evaluate those strategies and approaches, analyze several alternate solutions, and then select a strategy. And then finally, you need to actually accomplish or build, modify, and test that final design. Make sure to document absolutely everything along the way, and then obviously finally you have to deliver a final product. Then finally, please remember that any materials submitted by teams must be the work of the student participants and not the work of adult leaders. Your team's efforts are also being judged by a distinguished team of judges. Please be respectful of their time and the effort they put in for your students. And also, your team members will be representing your team and your school at all times during the competition. Judges will be present during those times as well. Scores among teams often differ by only fractions of a point, so everything counts. And then finally, have fun. One more time, I know I'm sounding like a broken record here, but please make sure that you read the rules and the score sheets. A lot of the score sheets have been updated for 2022, so please make sure that you read them carefully, even if you participated in previous years. And then make sure that you use those score sheets as your guide. Address every category and consider the wording carefully. And then finally, one last reminder, please, please, please check your best national registry. Everything that you need is available there. On your team workflow page. So that includes deadlines, files that you need to upload, deliverables, anything like that. If you have questions, please feel free to reach out to your hub.